Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod, where we explore and reveal the perspectives, insights, and approaches to deliver great results and growth in your agribusiness through better execution. Here's your host, the Integration Pacesetter, Joe Mosier.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pacesetter Pod. I'm your host, Joe Mosier. Thank you, as always, for choosing to spend your time with us today. Today, we're going to be sitting down with Jason Weirich, Executive Vice President of MFA. For those of you who don't know, Jason's going to walk us through who MFA is, but as a tee-up, they're a full-service farm supply and marketing cooperative serving more than 45,000 farmer owners across Missouri and adjacent states. I think that Jason's got some amazing insights into how do you successfully drive strategy execution and deliver growth within agribusiness. Some of the things that he's going to talk about that I think you'll find particularly interesting are, how do you operationalize a producer-first mindset and how you run the business? It's very easy to say, and it's lovely to hear, farmer first, producer first. But how do you actually bring that to life in doing the right thing for the farmer, even when it seems that it's putting profitability second? He's going to talk about the importance of partnerships and feedback loops to help you improve the quality of capital investment decision-making. Jason's going to share with us his commitment to maintaining a physical presence at every company retail location that they have, and share his observations around the progress that he has observed and the kind of inertia that this has generated towards driving growth and alignment in the business. And finally, he's also going to talk about why looking through the rear view to assess your past decisions and your previous investments is maybe just as important to growth as the roadmap that you're developing that's going to look out into the future. So again, Jason Weirich, Executive Vice President of Operations at MFA, a great conversation I'm excited to share with you today. So let's get over to the call. Jason, really excited to have you on the program today. Welcome to the Pacesetter Pod.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on with you today.
It's a real pleasure for me, and I appreciate you taking some time. I know you're heavy into planting. Guys are in the field, and so we don't take your time for granted. I think what we should do to start off the conversation today, we have a lot we want to talk about. I think you've got some really interesting insights into strategy execution within agribusiness. But to help kind of paint the picture of where you sit and how you see the world and the work that you all do, maybe walk us through who is MFA? Who do you serve? What do you guys do?
Yeah, MFA is a proud cooperative founded in 1914, 110 years old this year. We are based out of Columbia, Missouri, but really our base is the communities that we serve. We serve the state of Missouri, southern Iowa, eastern Kansas, and northeast Arkansas with 127 retail outlets, where we are full service agronomy, livestock, retail outlets. We serve 45,000 producers across those states that we serve, just shy of $2 billion in sales, and full service ag retail, like I mentioned, and working with our producers on a daily basis.
Very good. And how long you been with the company? What's your role at MFA? And I think the underlying question is, how does Jason spend his time?
Well, I've been with the company since 2011. I started off with MFA as the director of agronomy. And through that time, I got to work with our agronomy precision platform, crop track program, consulting program. And today, I'm an executive vice president of operations. So oversee all of our operations, retail, wholesale, procurement, operations here at MFA. And I spend my day working for our producers that we serve.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, and after we got introduced here not too long ago, and we were, getting to know one another and talking about having you on the program, I think one of the things that was apparent to me early on is a very felt and real appreciation for the U.S. farmer, for the producers that you all work with and serve. And you use the term, well, I shouldn't say this for sure, but it's something to the effect of, producer focused, producer first, and how you all make decisions. That's your bias, and it's great to have an explicit vision for how the company should be operating. Having that North Star is fantastic, but it's harder to operationalize. This is what I've observed in my careers. We can say farmer first, we can say customer first, whatever it might be, but when you get into the decisions, when you get into the way you run the business, that gets put under a lot of pressure, and sometimes it cracks. And so I'd be really curious to hear, your background that leads you to that fervent belief in the producer focus. And then how do you manage the tension in those instances where what is maybe best for the farmer is maybe in conflict with what's in the best interests of MFA, at least in the near term?
Yeah, you bet. It goes back a long ways for me, and it really starts at my childhood. I was very fortunate to have both sets of my families that operated a family operation in eastern Colorado, and my grandfathers both ran cow calf as well as row crops. And I had a goal of going home to farm. I think that's what ag retailers are: is the people that didn't have an opportunity to go home to farm, or doesn't have the opportunity, and we're finding our ways to be able to help producers and feed the world. And I left to go to college. I just want to go home and farm, like I mentioned. But I had the opportunity to start working on my master's, and I got to really work with extension and the whole extension aspect of helping producers bring new technologies, bringing new tools to the farm gate to help them be successful was really intriguing to me. And so I got my master's, and during that time, I had the opportunity to get my PhD. And all I wanted to do at that time, Joe, was be a state extension weed specialist, and that goes back to my grandfather making me pull weeds in Milo and grain sorghum. So I go out and chop the weeds and do all these things. I hated weeds. I hated sandburrs. And it was just goes back to that. I mean, it goes back to my childhood and what we did to be able to do that. So when I had the opportunity to become the state extension weed specialist for the University of Missouri based out of Portageville, my whole goal was just to be there to help the producer, to bring the new tools, to bring them technologies to be able to control the weeds, to do that. And when I came to MFA, I thought it was very unique. My whole goal when I got my degree was to help as many people as I could. And MFA allowed me to continue to do that in a larger scale than I could where I was at previously. And I remember when I was interviewing Joe with MFA, I told the guy at the time, I said, I'm not going to promote a product that's not agronomic first. You're not going to come to me and say, hey, this product's more profitable for MFA. I want you to promote this one over this one. And I said, hey, agronomics has got to be first in all the recommendations that we do. And here at MFA, we continue to drive to that. So it's really the history that I have growing up and thinking about the producer first. What's good for the producer? From a financial standpoint here at MFA or any retailer, when our producers are doing good, usually the cooperative's doing good. And that's something we continue to focus on as well. It's got to be good for the producer. It's got to be agronomics first. And then the other things will kind of fall in line as we proceed through the business planning.
Have you, how have you helped to maybe cascade that through the organization? Do you find it challenging to influence the decisions up and down the chain to stay aligned with that agronomics first, profitability second type mindset? Or is that embedded in the culture of the organization such that it's not necessarily a barrier that you encounter day to day?
It's up and down the chain. It is the common theme that we have. It's one of our core values: innovation and technology and customer partnering. Those are two of our 6 core values here at MFA. And we start every meeting and every discussion with those core values, is looking at those core values and what are we going to do today that's going to help our producers. And from the CEO to the ground level to any of our intro level agronomy training, business training, any of the stuff that we're doing with our employees, it is producer first. And I know that's cliche to say, but it really is. And I don't know of a single place within our organization where we get pushback.
That's a success case for sure. We know that kind of intense customer focus creates a lot of value over the long term. And the reason I wanted to ask about this is it's always interesting to hear how leaders navigate that in the near term, because it's the near term, it's the day-to-day decisions, it's what's right in front of us, where that right decision or the right direction sometimes becomes less clear and where that friction arises. And over time, you look back and realize, man, we did a lot of things that maybe didn't hurt our customers, but certainly didn't optimize how much upside we could offer, right? And we defaulted too much to one side of the ledger versus the other. And so I think it's really interesting. Can you talk a bit about how, it's not just the day-to-day operational decisions, but how do you ensure that the way you make investments, and define investments however you want, right? It could be CapEx in terms of infrastructure, it could be technology, it could be talent, it could be product, whatever that might be. How do you make sure that your investments are also aligned with those kinds of values?
Yeah, that's always tricky. When we have limited capital spend, we think about the investments, whether it be capital expenditures, people investments, time investments, and what we do and where we spend our capital, whether it be human capital, dollar capital, whatever it may be. And that is something that my team is strictly focused on making sure we're investing our time and money in the right places. And when I look at production agriculture, coming from the precision agronomy world, I managed our precision platform here for about 8 years. And through all the data that we have, Joe, putting that data to work was always my goal. I'm very much a data guy. I like data. I think we have a lot of data that we're not utilizing within our system, within agriculture in general. I think about the producer. How much data do they have on every acre of farm that they have, every cow calf that's coming off of that farm, and putting that data to work to make sure that they're making the right decisions for their operations. What we'd like to do is, with our tools, is be able to help them make those decisions as well as make our decisions. So when we look at the change in production agriculture, you look at going from a 4440 John Deere. I love a 4440 John Deere. It's a workhorse of the tractors. It's what we grew up driving. But if I look at production agriculture today, they're no longer running an 8-row planter. I mean, they can plant so fast. They can spray so fast. We can do so much in such a short window that our investments in our facilities have to change. So we have to be able to do more with less and do it faster than we ever have been able to do it today. And if I look across ag retail in general, you see a lot of investment happening in ag retail. And that is due to the advancements in technology, advancements at the farm gate. So not only at MFA, but others as well, continue to invest in speed, consolidations, continue to be at the forefront of a lot of conversations of how are we going to do more with less. The investment in our people, the finding people that are willing to work the long hours that are required at our farmer level as well as the retail level is continuing to be a struggle. You know, we have a hard time finding those type of folks that are willing to put in the hours and invest in our producers. So I think aligning our investments with our values as customer first, those are not always easy. We have a lot of locations that are 8 to 10 miles apart, and we continue to evaluate the longevity of those facilities. Some of those facilities were built in the 60s and 70s. And then how do you continue to operate those facilities into the future?
Yeah, it's such a vexing challenge. I think about earlier in my career managing grain assets. And when we thought about investing capital to grow the business, which would put us in a better position to serve more farmers and serve them better. I mean, they make a generalization here, but they tended to care about speed, right? How fast can you dump and are you never full, right? And also they want hours of operation, et cetera. But it tended to come down to speed. And where it got sticky is we could speed up. You know, we could invest in bigger dumps, faster legs, bigger receiving bins, extra pits, et cetera. But at some point, you're going to choke your asset, right? This was a grain origination type business. You might also say, well, you know, we don't have critical safety devices on all the equipment, or it's not functioning properly. We have belts that run off, and we need to spend a lot of time getting them retracked. We got legs that plug. We have all the stuff that happens inside the elevator that if we could fix that, it actually would make the elevator faster. But the producer wouldn't see that. They would see that the elevator was down for 2 weeks while we did the project, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just such a tough challenge of sometimes doing the non-obvious investment on behalf of your customer, even when they wouldn't see it. And then, of course, you need to communicate that. And so I wonder, do you all run into that sometimes too, where you actually are making investments that you believe are in the best interest of the producer, but it's a communication challenge because maybe it's the non-obvious investment. It's not what they would expect to see, or they don't feel the benefit up front?
Yeah, I think it's, for me specifically, or MFA specifically, it seems like we have producers all over that are upset with how capital is spent within the organization because it may not be in their specific area or at their home store. So we have 14 board members that are on our board of directors, and they help guide us. We have a strategy committee on our board to help us with some of those capital expenditures, those future CapEx expenditures that we make. And I do believe that when I look at what we've done as a team, I have a great team here. We used to have several buckets of capital. And so it's a limited capital pool based off profitability and health of the organization. And say you have 5 different buckets. Well, those 5 buckets were all split individually. And it's always crazy to me that the company wasn't setting direction of, hey, this is where we're going to go. This is our focus over the next 5 to 10 years and where we're going. So quickly realized, hey, let's put that capital in one pot and bring the teams together and decide as a team with expertise. I've got some guys that have been in the industry for 30, 35 years that have a wealth of knowledge that can help us spend the money in the right places where we're going to get a return or a positive return. And a lot of times, Joe, I wouldn't say a lot of times, a couple times, there's been some investments made on a cash flow standpoint where it's the right move for the business, where we know we need to be here, that we want to invest in these areas. We want to do that. Is it the most profitable return for our capital expenditure? No, it may not be, but it's the right decision. So in October of 23, I took over all operations. Prior to that, I was just over the retail side, all the retail operations. In 23, October 23, the whole operations come underneath one umbrella. And it's really neat to see 10 folks get in the room and bring in the capital discussions and really focus on what's going to move the business forward as we go forward. So we have a unique team built. I have 2 or 3 retail guys on there, and I have 6 wholesale directors on here who have been working in plant foods procurement, feed procurement, grain operations, engineering. And we all sit in a room and say, okay, what's our roadmap? What does our road look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road? What are we going to do with our capital spend now? Where are we going to spend R&M? How are we investing? What facilities are we investing in as we go forward? So that's been a big undertaking as you pull back control of some of that capital. We've been around for a long time, Joe, but we want to be here longer. And we know we're not going to be 127 retail locations for the next 100 years. That's not the way the industry is going. Traveling 30, 40 miles is not uncommon anymore. When we think about how far we travel for baseball games, how far you travel for football games, people travel to the stores, 45 minutes in a car is not very uncommon anymore. And so agriculture has been slow to change or adopt to that. And with limited capital, we have to continue to focus on that. So I think that's something that we've done, is bringing everybody together on the capital piece, having those discussions, trying to develop that roadmap, that 5, 10, 15-year roadmap.
Poorly executed mergers and acquisitions destroy more value than they create. They can set your company back years. To defend your firm's position in the marketplace, you need access to the leading practices that unlock the greater potential of your people, processes, and systems. If you are undertaking a company transformation or pursuing an acquisition as a vehicle to grow, set up a call with Joe by visiting www.moshercg.com.
For me, I think about these decisions and there's a lot of technical tools you can use, weighted criteria and rubrics, et cetera, where you kind of ensure strategic alignment of your investments, but sometimes it comes down to just courage and communications. So one of the best ways to destroy your capital plan is to be egalitarian and make sure everyone gets a little bit, right? Because that presumes that all parts of your business are created equal, or all the needs of all parts of your business are equal. And sometimes you're going to have to put the lion's share of the purse into 1 or 2 specific parts of the business, whether those are assets, product lines, technology, whatever it might be. So you got to have the courage to, one, make the decision, and then you got to have the ability and the conviction to go out and communicate it. Because sometimes the easiest thing to do after you make that tough decision is then not talk about it.
Right.
And that just sows dissent. It makes folks feel like the system or the process has been gamed, or it just makes them not understand why a very real need that they have in their business, right? So that guy who wants to reline the spouts, who wants to add additional bays in the dry barn, who wants to get new toolbars, and all he ever gets is fresh paint for the toolbars. You got to make sure that those folks understand why that decision was made. Provide them the opportunity to explain to you why they think it was the wrong decision and move from there. I just think if you try to spread it out like peanut butter, you're not going to get the results you want. And if you shy away from explaining why you made the decision you did, it's just bad leadership, and it's going to fester into a bigger issue over the long term.
Joe, I feel like you've been listening to my conversations over the last few months.
I have. I bugged your office. Yeah. Never been on site, but yeah. No. So kind of you're talking about your team there for a moment. Another thing that I thought was really interesting from our prior discussions, Jason, was you have made an ongoing commitment in your career, and specifically now in MFA, to maintain a physical presence at all company locations, or as many locations as you possibly can. Now, I have a bias that's very much in favor for that. I feel like it's important, but I'd like to ask you to unpack for us, why have you made that commitment to visiting all the locations in the business? What have you learned in that process? And can you point to impacts that it's had either on you, on the people, or on the business itself?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit of a history of how that all come about. From 2011, like I mentioned, I was in the agronomy role. So anytime there was a spray complaint, drift complaint, fertilizer compatibility, fertilizer spreader problem, myself or one of my team members would go out and we would work with the producer. We would work with the location manager. We were kind of that self-insured adjuster, if you will, at the farm gate. And so for the first 9 years of my career here, Joe, I showed up as a service person. I was there as an agronomist. I'm here. How do I help you? How do I help your producer? How do I help your customer? So I had a very different perspective on the business at that time. I was strictly a cost center, if you will. I had no P&L responsibility. I was strictly a cost center, me and all my agronomists running around. And so we were the service arm of MFA on the agronomy side. Land livestock, we worked with pastures and cattle as well. So I don't want to forget that. That's an important part of our business. But so whenever I took over the VP of the retail piece, I was the only person in the entire organization that had been to every one of the facilities that it was still here anyway, that employed at that time, that I've been to every retail location in the organization. And I think it's tough when we're sitting here in our beautiful home office. I love it, but this is, like I started out with, this is not who we are. Our people are who we are. We're in the countries, we're in the communities that we serve. But when I bring in my regional and my district manager guys, and we're having discussions around the capital expenditures, where we're going to spend money, the folks that haven't been to those facilities, it's really tough for them to have a perspective on why are we spending money here? What's the business like in that area? What's the row crop? What's the cattle numbers? What's the people like? What's the culture at our locations like? And so in 2020, at that time, we loaded up in a Suburban. If you can imagine 5 guys loaded up in a Suburban and going to 127 retail locations. And we got really close over about 6 months. So in 6 months, we went to 127 retail locations. And Joe, we'd spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour at every location. And we, with the manager, we'd meet all the folks at the staff that were at the facilities at the time. But for sure, the location managers were always there. And the location manager would give us a tour of the facility. They have a lot of pride in the facilities. Loved it. Saw different things. Found some cool signs. Found some cool treasure history while we were doing that as well. But really heard about the business and what are their long-term goals? What's their strategy? What's the future plans for them personally, as well as what they had for their location. And it really opened up the eyes of the other folks that were participating in the tour because they haven't been to those facilities. And so throughout that process, we really had a better understanding of where we were going to spend capital, what our direction was, and I didn't know that that's the conditions of those assets. So as we discussed with the capital piece, the capital's in one pool, and you have 4 guys fighting for dollars. They had to come in and bring a project or proposal to get some of that capital money and talk about producers, profitability, return, long-term assets that we're going to focus on. So I think it was great, obviously, because we're doing it again. Probably a little faster this time, probably not spend as much time as we would like, but it's still good to get out and visit the site. So in December of 23, we started the process again, except for now I have all my operations. So all my wholesale procurement, as well as my retail operations, we load up in a big van or 2 Suburbans this time. There's 10 of us that go around, and this time we're touring all of our operations. So every retail and wholesale operation for MFA, so our fertilizer terminals, our feed bills that we own, all of our retail operations, crop protection warehouses, we're going to hit all of those. Actually, Joe, we're going to finish those up ahead of schedule. So in 5 months, we're going to hit every one of those facilities. And I don't know that I can pinpoint one major thing to come out of that, other than it means a lot to the folks that are out there, where they're listening to their issues that they have, talking about their business. We're talking about their capital expenditures we're going to have in the next 12 months with them. But I think from a team standpoint, I think about the team that is overseeing all operations from FA. We are exposing them to everything. They are learning what does it mean to be a senior director of livestock operations and managing 7 feed mills. So the retail guys had no idea we have union and non-union feed mills. What headaches come with that? What blessings do we have there? What's the procurement look like? What's transportation look like? So you learn about everybody's part of the business, and then we come back together and we have this capital pool sitting here, or we have this long-term discussion of, hey, what does a business look like in 5, 10, 15 years? Where do we need to be? Where are we going to go? And how are we going to get there? now that we have 10 of us that have been to all the facilities, it's a little bit easier to have those conversations of, hey, Mexico, we got a manager there, so-and-so, and this is where we're going to spend some capital money. Mm-hmm. So now everybody has a different perspective of, hey, I've been there. I know the guy. I know the team that's there. I know the culture. They're ready to turn that capital for our producers into a positive light. And that's really what we're trying to drive towards, is a team approach to what's the long-term roadmap look like, as well as what's the future of MFA.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And, it's a little bit of a trick question. I didn't actually anticipate you being able to point to a specific quantitative result, say, hey, we did this and we got that. But what you are saying, which is what I expected, is it's a felt temperature change in the business, because so much about strategy, it's not just about the 150 slide deck. It's not about the posters on the wall. It's not about the taglines on the emails. It's about a set of decisions. But those decisions also being made on the back of a two-way feedback loop, or actually a multidirectional feedback loop, where everybody's in a learning journey. Folks are going to advocate for their priorities for sure. Folks are going to express their needs, but people also need to ask questions. And I think this investment, this very serious investment, you think about taking 10, you said, roughly 10 senior folks in the business, not just the time and, time multiplied by their hourly rate imputed through their salary in the vehicle, but the disruption of taking them out of their jobs, taking them out of their, home base. It's a serious and significant investment. And on the back end of it, achieving that alignment by enabling that multi-directional feedback loop, by helping people see what's going on, by helping folks understand the priorities, helping folks understand the trade-offs that are going to be necessary. I'm not surprised at all that you all are seeing a much better setup for execution, because that's exactly what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day. And it often is just it's just a temperature change. It's different, right? And from my own experience, I can say that the folks at the locations, it has to be backed up with action. Getting a visit from quote unquote corporate. I don't know if they call you guys corporate or HQ or what they call you, but getting a visit from HQ is a little bit exciting, a little bit nerve-wracking, a little bit of a relief when everyone leaves. But then when it's followed up and you see investment decisions, you see priorities, you see the offer of support, you see the addition of headcount or resources based on those engagements that they had, that has a significant impact over the long term on the business. So I applaud you guys for taking the time to do it.
Yeah, one of the other things that was really, I agree with you 100%, by the way, but one of the other things, being new into this role, I've heard the comment many times about why the rear view mirror is so small compared to the front windshield. But looking at past investments, there's some questions, some places I've been, I'm like, why did we do this? Why was this decision made? So like a little bit of a internal case study, if you will, of decisions that were made 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And if you look at them today, you're like, okay, today I wouldn't make that same decision, but what were the decisions, or what was the metrics they were using at that time that drove them to that decision? And let's not make that mistake again as we go forward. So I like looking forward. What's that roadmap look like? But then I can look backwards too and say, hey, we shouldn't have done that. And how do we prevent from 10 years or 20 years, if I'm not here, the next guy that comes in and says, man, why did Doc do that? Why did Doc approve to do that? Or why did his team decide to do that there? Not from a pride standpoint, but from just the stewardship of the capital that our producers have entrusted us with, is to make the right decisions for that capital to meet the needs of their operations. So,
which really reinforces, you talked earlier about having everyone needs to come in with a project charter. And as a recovering project manager myself, I get all warm and fuzzy when I hear project charter. And other folks, may run for the door. I don't know if you were running off the whole thing, but you rattled off that how does this benefit the producer? What's it do for profitability? What's the return? Meaning what's maybe the Rogie hurdle, or how long before we see a payback on this? And then also what's the long-term value creation, right? And beyond the payback, what does it do for the business? And that can start to feel like administrative burden or bureaucracy or paperwork, et cetera. But it does two things. One, it helps you equally and comparatively assess one opportunity to invest versus another at the moment that you make the investment. But as you said, if it's done well, and if anybody happens to save that slide deck or that email or that piece of paper, it provides the baseline of which you can go back in the future and look, because that's one of the things I think really does hamstring people is, and how do they continuously improve in their capital investment strategies is, what was the return? Did we feel like that project was successful? Or we feel like that never really worked out? Or we have a bunch of anecdotes that suggest one or the other, but without being able to go back to that core document, that core set of facts around what drove you to the decision. Not saying was it the right decision or not, but what made us believe it was the right decision at that time is really, really important. We've done episodes on that. We did an episode here not too long ago called 6 Questions on One Page, which was meant to simplify that process because, again, that just unlocks so much value in the process is documenting frankly, the business case and the rationale for why you're writing a check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. On our board, as mentioned, the strategy committee that we have on the board and answering the board, and obviously you throw the performer up there and you talk about the performance. You talk about, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the savings. This is return. This is how we're going to meet the needs of the producer, the future producer, current as well as the future producer. And it's a struggle. It's a people business. And, you got to resell the fertilizer every year. You got to resell the CP every year. It's a challenge for our locations to sit here in a boardroom and make some projections for that 3 to 5 to 10 year. And you're banking on the people. It's all about people at our facilities. And we continue to struggle with that part at times with having the right people at the right place at the right time to be able to meet the needs of our producers and how fast they are. But our board is very good. I think our board is very engaged, very willing and open to some of these conversations around improvements in speed and efficiencies at our facilities. So pretty happy with our board of directors right now.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, again, I know we're at planting season. I don't know where you all are at exactly in Missouri at this time, but I know that you've got a stretch of dry weather here after a lot of rain. And so a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to take more time than I requested, but it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time. And if folks want to learn more about MFA, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think MFAinc.com would be a great way. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. I'd be happy to reach out to me as well. You can find my contact information on the web pretty easy.
Very good. Well, we'll make sure that the link to the website is in the show notes. And just thank you again for joining us and being part of the Pacesetter Pod.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much.
And to all of our listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. A reminder to like and subscribe to the Pacesetter Pod. Wherever you get your podcast, you can do it on your device right now. And if you'd be so kind, please consider leaving us a review, as that's the best way to support the show and ensure that we get this out to as many people that would benefit from the content as possible. And to continue the conversation, you can connect with me, Joe Mosier, on LinkedIn, or set up a call directly by visiting Mosier Consulting Group online at mosiercg.com. Thank you for listening, and have a safe day.
This is the podcastfactory.com.